is intended for mature, open-minded audiences only. If you are easily offended, we suggest you turn this wacky shit straight off.
So we're doing this in the daytime, which we don't typically do. I mean, sometimes it's light outside, but we're all reasonably sober. This will be a bit of an experiment. I kind of feel like I'm doing it naked for
unprepared, as it were.
Yeah.
I have my lights off, so I'm still in the dark.
Now, why is your voice a little shredded, Lyle?
It's from dialysis.
Oh, yeah.
They suck all that blood. Dude, they sucked off fucking 4 pounds off me, dude, today.
They sucked off?
Pounds?
Yeah, pounds. What? Yeah, through dialysis.
Damn.
They take water weight, excessive water weight, and they pull it out of your blood. So when they put it back, you're lacking fucking basically 4 pounds of water weight.
Good Lord. I don't know my numbers that well, but that sounds like a lot.
Yeah.
That sounds like a chunk of blood.
Pretty heavy because, like, I haven't been working out. I haven't been, when I was working out, like, on my days off of dialysis, I was walking 4 miles.
Mm-hmm.
It was a half walk, half jog.
Yeah.
And, like, I haven't done any of that since we've been in lockdown.
Yeah.
So I'm not burning off anything, and I'm eating probably a little bit more than I was before. So
what else is there to do but sit around and eat? Yeah. Well,
Mom inherited a real bad thing with me is not to waste food. So, like, you eat what's on your fucking plate.
That is a bad. I get the reasoning behind that, but that is how so many of us got fat, right?
Sure.
Just like, I can't leave those bites.
The guilt trip about, like, the starving children in Africa.
Yeah, it was a legitimate thing. I don't think my parents ever gave me that line, but they gave me something like it. That would be like, or you had to eat it. Like, you just had to eat it. It wasn't like, it wasn't an option. You had to eat it, finish everything on your plate. And I think that does send you down a slippery slope of not paying attention to how full you are or whether or not you even want food at that particular juncture. Yeah, strange things. But tonight I want to talk about the history of Tiki. I really like the history of Tiki because, in spite of its savage, untamed sexuality and exotic imagery and mythos, it's it's decidedly an American tale. So mix yourself up a Mr. Bally High and join us for that. But Foist, did you guys have any news? Lyle, I think you had something you wanted to bring up last time, yeah?
I don't think so. Didn't know. Well, the earthquakes.
Oh, yeah, the earthquakes.
It was nuts. We had a 6.5 in Idaho. And that was just recently. It was this week. So,
yeah, and that's coming right off of one in Utah that was about that size, yeah?
Sure. But, like, that's like really close to the Yellowstone Park.
Mm-hmm.
There was also a freaking tornado in the Tri-Cities. Did you see that?
I did, yeah.
Well, there was a wind advisory for us too. I mean, it could have happened anywhere.
Yeah, we had a pretty
fancy nights all the time. They would they're just dust devils. They would come down Wenatchee Heights.
Yeah, they're little mini tornadoes.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was a full-on tornado, though. Just they do get them more in Tri-Cities than we do. We've had some like up on the Waterville Plateau and surrounding areas, but we don't really get the touchdown funnels that they do in Tri-Cities. But this was a pretty scary-looking funnel cloud coming right at them. But yeah, it got me thinking. It's like, how horrible would it be right now if there was some cataclysmic natural disaster thing on top of all of this?
Yeah, well, Idaho's right by Yellowstone Park. And everybody knows that, like, if Yellowstone goes, it's going to be, what is it? Is it 10 or is it 100 times worse than Mount St. Helens?
Oh, it's going to be basically a world-altering event.
It would take the worries of the corona off our plate if we want to look at a bright side.
It would be about as bad as an asteroid hitting, basically.
Yeah. So, and it's something to keep in mind too, is in a sense, because it's like, yeah, it's kind of bad right now, but like, could you fucking imagine, dude, just blanketed out skies?
Yeah.
For like a year.
It is bad now, but it could be so much worse.
You know what I think the worst fucking thing that could happen right now would be the internet going down globally.
Oh, for sure. And I thought about that the other day when we were having a massive windstorm. I mean, even just locally, like even just losing our internet, I thought about that as like, oh, I mean, you know, I'll work on some art, read some books, but what a shitty time. Collectively, if the internet went down, that would be a big deal. Because that's the only way that some of us are staying connected. And I think you're already going to start seeing an uptick in suicides. I really do, within like the next few weeks, because there's a type of depression that just can't, they can't handle that isolation, and it's heartbreaking. But I think one thing that might be keeping a lot of those people hanging on is, well, shit like this, you know, podcasts, Zoom meetings,
Pornhub,
stay at home. Yeah.
I'd like to see a study. Well, maybe I wouldn't. I'd like to see a study on the effects of porn on depression, because it's
the pages are stick.
Probably not.
It's a type of dopamine.
It's probably happy. Just got a sore hand.
I wonder if it's.
Yeah. Was that posted, the one that we were talking about, like suicide from the? That was during the live show. To reiterate on that we were discussing that through all this coronavirus stuff, that there might be an incline of people with suicide because of losing their jobs and losing, you know, like their housing.
Yeah, that is an added.
Because like if you're in a family situation, you know, there's a lot of guilt-ridden shit. You know, if you're the one that fucking gets corona, you know, bringing it into this house, you know, there's gonna be a heavy toll on a lot of people like that. And I think, and I would say not like a lot of people, but like there's very Gentile people out there that would probably, it would devastate them to be separated from their family during a time like this.
And people are having to do it. People having to do it all over the place. I just saw an interview with what's his kisser, Andy something or other from E or Bravo, one of those networks.
Cohen.
Andy Cohen, and he had to be isolated from his family for 2 weeks because he got it. But yeah, couldn't see his kid like 2 weeks. Fucking bizarre. John Mark, you want to mute your video game?
I'm not playing anything.
Oh, is that you, Chris?
I was like, what?
If you maybe just pull it like a little further away from the mic. But well, anyone got anything else before we get on to my Super Day shower?
Do it. I got a little true or false 12 question quiz for y'all. I think it'd be fun to tack on at the end here.
Yeah. We could use more fun. What's that?
We're going to keep this thing a little short and stubby or what?
Well, I don't know. I've got quite a bit of Tiki history to talk about, so we'll see. It'll probably pan out to be a regular length.
Oh, shit. Fuck. All right. Backup. Now backup's wrong.
Well, that's all right. We didn't miss anything too key. But so anyway, the story of Tiki, it really begins with one man, and that was a Prohibition-era bootlegger named Ernest Raymond Beaumont Gant.
Wow, what a name.
How's that for exotic? One of the whitest names in history, if you think about it.
One more time, Beaumont.
Ernest Raymond Beaumont Gant. Or I think it might be Gaunt. But yeah, at the end of Prohibition, he decided he'd better find himself a more legitimate way to make clams. He was a pretty successful bootlegger. I believe he and his father had an operation going all through Prohibition. And so he decided to open up his own restaurant called Don Beachcomber.
Wouldn't it be great if the operation was named Operation Clam Slam?
Operation Clam Slam?
Yeah, dude.
Sure would.
That's what pirates do.
Arr, slam the clam. So he opened up a restaurant in Hollywood called Don Beachcomber, and he was pretty well traveled by the time that he was in his 20s. He seemed like a pretty intriguing dude because he's one of these guys that was always off on some exotic adventure, especially in the Pacific and the islands. And during the late 20s, he was hopping freighters all along Hawaii and Guam. So he started collecting exotic art and sculptures and religious relics from these far off places, going all the way into like Africa, you know, all over the world. It wasn't just in the Pacific. So when he was plotting his restaurant, he decided to make it a themed place focusing on these exotic elements, you know, like bamboo walls and shrunken heads, carved idols, and Polynesian food, because that was pretty new and exotic, you know, during the 30s, 20s, and 30s. To highlight the place, his famous cocktail menu, which had drinks, names such as Cobra Fangs, Skull and Bones, and his most famous invention, the zombie. Now, this was all new. And there are lots of legends surrounding these early days of tiki and cocktails in general. But one story of the zombie was that Ernest, who at that point had legally changed his name to Don Beach, which is much easier to say, he developed this entire persona of this beach bum. And one of the theories was that Don went through as many as 12 cases of rum while he tried to dial in and perfect the zombie. There's no question that he did this with lots of drinks, but the zombie is a really complex and interesting cocktail. But another theory was that he just whipped it up when somebody came in and said, I got a big meeting. I need I need something to wake me up from the hangover of yesterday's choices. And he asked for the strongest corpse reviver that the bar could make. And, corpse reviver was a fairly new term at that point, but that was what it was. It was a strong, stiff, usually sugary and stimulant heavy drink to get you up and going, an eye-opening drink that could wake the dead.
Hair of the dog.
Yeah. Well, of course, that ties into the name zombie, something that was strong enough to wake the dead. But tiki drinks in general often have quite a few ingredients and, a lot of secrecy surrounding them for a long time. And we'll talk a bit more on that later. But so Don the Beachcomber, his restaurant was a huge success. Legends of these super strong exotic drinks and foreign food all enjoyed in this exciting place with palm trees and flowing waterfalls and, an overall slant toward offering the working class people a little slice of a tropical paradise right there in the middle of Hollywood. It was brilliant. And being in the heart of Hollywood, plenty of stars and starlets were often seen lounging, in the corner booths and taking in the faux jungle atmosphere. And someone else thought it was a brilliant idea after he visited the spot, and that was a restaurateur named Vic Bergeron. Vic had a place of his own in, I believe it was Northern California or Oakland, somewhere in that region. And in 1936, Vic visited Don the Beachcomber, and he fell in love with what he saw. Now, Vic's restaurant was called Hinky Dinks, and it didn't seem to have too much of a theme going on, but it fit at least a few steps in the direction that Don Beachcomber took to this brilliant, kitschy new level. Vic fell in love with that so much that he went back to Hinky Dinks, changed the decor to look like Don's, made the menu, more exotic.
God, how did Don feel about that?
Well, as you can imagine, yeah. I mean, it became this sort of rivalry.
Oh, my God. This needs to be a movie about this.
It could be. Yeah, it really could be. But he added his own line of rum cocktails and punches, and he renamed his place Trader Vic's. A name that most of us know at this point, but there's no question he was a copycat. But Trader Vic would prove to be just as key in the overall tiki movement, including seemingly being the first one to start using, to at least get more creative with the glasses and the mugs, and which led to the birth of the tiki mug. That wasn't something that Don the Beachcomber was doing, although nobody at this time was using the word tiki in that regard. So both these restaurants and bars continued to flourish pretty well. And then World War II began looming on the horizon, and Don Beach was actually off to the war, and he became a major in the Air Force. And he was wounded in battle during a U-boat attack. And while he was recovering in the military hospital, he started writing down drink recipes and perfecting some of his older ones, including one that was a fairly simple little rum drink called the QB Cooler, which comes back into play a bit later on. But one of the gods that the GIs learned about when they're out on the islands, stationed in the Pacific Theater, as it was called, was an ancient fertility god called Tiki. And you can imagine, close your eyes and picture a Tiki carving, and what you're seeing is something that sort of evolved mostly through Hollywood, that sort of cartoonish Scooby-Doo, Gilligan's Island Tiki god. The original depictions of Tiki were more African looking, and they almost always had giant cocks, like sometimes even like taller than the gods themselves. Like my cock is bigger than my person. I mean, this was the god of essentially shooting a baby warrior up into that topless maiden. You know, that was what this god represented. And the statues wanted to make that real clear. You got to look up Tiki. Just put up Tiki dick statue. You'll see what I mean. They're hilariously, they're cartoonish. So soon after that period, you started to hear the word Tiki as sort of a bastardized term for all things exotic and Polynesian and, you know, vaguely African or otherwise tacky interpretation of some of these cultures. Post-World War II is one of my favorite periods in U.S. history and in pop culture. You know, after the horrors of World War II were over, there was this big sense of relief and good fortune for a lot of people, white people anyway. Things still weren't going to be grand for non-whites for a few more decades in this country. But for, you know, it again, just taking the whole thing in like from a pop culture standpoint, this was a time when hundreds of thousands of people, mostly young men, were coming back home after being in the Pacific Theater and seeing and experiencing the terrors of war, but also new tropical lands and topless natives and statues of heathen gods with giant cocks on some of these more remote islands, and new kinds of animals, new exotic birds, and hearing new kinds of music. And, you know, traveling overseas outside of the military back then was pretty rare. And if you did it, you got on a boat. Planes were a thing, of course, but it wasn't like things are now where you just buy a ticket and go where you want. You know, that was a pretty luxurious and limited thing for that time. So if you wanted to go exploring these lands, you needed to be essentially rich or, you know, sleeping in the bowels of the boat and just going where you go. Travel was a completely different thing. So all these guys came back with these visions dancing around in their head, and came back, by the way, to a fairly conservative nation at that time. You know, World War II ended just over a decade or so after Prohibition was repealed. So these guys were seeing some cultures that by many accounts were much freer, shall we say, you know, less worry about nudity, less structure concerning sexuality or relationships. And some of those religions were focusing more on sexuality. So coming back from all that probably left a lot of these young GIs, believe it or not, feeling a type of nostalgic, or at least wanting to capture some of the spoils of that great adventure that they had all just been on. You know, author of Tales of the South Pacific, I'm spacing his name, but he actually called the Pacific Theater the great adventure of their lives. And I'm sure some of the soldiers would disagree with that. You know, your experience from one soldier to the next could be very, very different, especially in a war like World War II, which happened all over the place, and very different experiences for people fighting in the snow outside of Germany versus some of the people that were stationed in, you know, Hawaii or Guam or somewhere in the Pacific. None of it would have been terribly pleasant, I'm sure. But that book, by the way, Tales of the South Pacific, was later made into that Rodgers and Hammerstein musical called South Pacific, which of course was a big hit. And that was another thing that helped along this sort of ridiculous but romantic and exciting and adventurous Hollywood version of the South Seas during that time. And one of the songs in that musical was called Bali Hai, which is a mythical tropical island, which inspired a new tiki-themed bar and restaurant in San Diego called the Bali Hai after this movie.
Fun trivia fact, I played violin in the orchestra for a production of South Pacific when I was in Bangladesh.
The fact that you played violin, period, is a fun trivia fact. But in an actual musical in a third world country. That is a chunk of trivia.
Sounds like something a spy would do.
That's what I was about to say. It's like, what else you got in that violin case, sir? I bet they weren't checking musical cases like they do now. But speaking of the the Bali Hai, this tasty drink that I have been enjoying almost every night of late is called the Mr. Bali Hai, and that's where it was invented. It's my favorite tiki drink by far. I'm not a huge tiki drink guy. A lot of them are too sweet, and I'm not a super rum based drink guy, but this one is, oh my God, it's a special drink. It's dark Jamaican rum, light Puerto Rican rum, lemon juice, simple syrup, coffee liqueur or coffee brandy, which seems to be harder to find, and pineapple juice. So the main components of the flavor, and I know that pineapple juice and coffee may sound like Barf City to some of y'all, but I'm telling you, that flavor profile is fucking addictive. And the coffee notes are pretty subtle, you know, competing with citrus and the fruity funkiness of that dark Jamaican rum. It all blends together in this really fucking delicious flavor. And it's not super sweet. I don't actually put simple syrup in it because I think using sweetened pineapple juice is enough for me. Like, I don't like super sweet drinks. But anyway, out in front of the Bali High restaurant was this huge statue of a headhunter with a bone through its nose. There was no shortage of stereotypes or even straight up racism in the tiki world, especially during this time. But that head became a bit of the mascot for the Bali High restaurant, and they even produced their own tiki mugs in the image of it. And that's what they served the Mr. Bali High drink in. And one day, good old Trader Vic stumbled into the Bali High, and he saw those mugs. He's like, oh my God, I got to take home a couple of those, because he was a collector. And so he ordered a bunch of Mr. Bali Highs just so he could take the mugs home. But then one of the waiters was finally like, you know, we can just sell you some of these mugs. So he bought like a whole case of them. And but Vic later added his own coffee drink to the menu and served it in his own custom-made headhunter cup. But the biggest source of debate concerning who stole from who is the Mai Tai. It's an interesting story with the Mai Tai because it's by far the most famous tiki drink. You know, before the Mai Tai, it was the zombie. The zombie was the king in the tiki world, or exotic drinks as they were called in the early days. But it does seem that Don Beach did have a drink on his menu at one point called the Mai Tai Swizzle. And it wasn't on there long because Don himself wasn't really a fan of it. But looking at the ingredients, it's very different than what we know as a Mai Tai. But Don also had a drink that he'd created earlier on, as you might remember, the QB Cooler. Now, that was one that he was re-perfecting during World War II, but apparently had an earlier version on his menu at the time that Vic would have visited there. And the QB Cooler was almost exactly what the modern Mai Tai was. And years later, there was a man, I can't remember his name, but he was an associate of Trader Vic's, and he worked with them for like over a decade. I don't know if he testified because this did go to court, but he definitely came forward and said, I worked with Vic, and I knew that the whole time he was trying to crack the code of the Mai Tai, he was trying to crack the code of the QB Cooler. He was trying to deconstruct Don Beachcomber's QB Cooler, and he named his the Mai Tai. Now, whether or not he copied the name from, Mai Tai, I think, meant good in Tahitian. It's easy to see that they would both use those terms. But really, it's more about that drink. Who invented the most famous, one of the most famous cocktails ever, even outside of the tiki world. So they did go to court, and ultimately the court sided with Vic. So he goes down in history as being the one who officially came up with the Mai Tai, but most tiki historians, they kind of split the difference. So like they tag teamed it in a funny kind of way, not on purpose. But another really famous tiki drink, the Painkiller. It's probably
that one.
Oh my God, it's delicious. If you like coconut and pineapple, it's a very simple one. Most tiki drinks are very involved. The Mr. Bali High is actually a pretty simple one, considering all the flavors you get with it. The Painkiller is even simpler, and that was invented at a tiny bar on a little island in the British Isles called the Soggy Dollar Bar, and it was called that because there was no dock, so you had to just anchor your boat offshore and wade in, so you'd be paying with soggy dollars. Now the original recipe was Presser's Navy Strength rum, orange juice, pineapple juice, and coconut cream. Yeah, fucking delicious. And it was, it's crushed ice, usually blended. Although if you blend it, it starts to lean more toward a pina colada. So maybe I think this one might just be crushed ice. But anyway, what makes it interesting is that the Painkiller is one of only a few trademarked drinks. The Presser's company, Presser's Rum, trademarked it years ago. So now if you offer a Painkiller at your bar using any other rum, they can sue you. And they do.
Fucking twats.
Isn't that
Come
bullshit?
on.
It's bullshit. Yeah, and everyone hates it. So, of course, everyone makes their own Painkiller without Presser's. But you can do it if you call it like Painkiller-ish or Unpainkiller. People have gotten away with that. But there was a bar called the Painkillers. And they had to change their name because Presser's Rum sued them. I keep saying Presser's. It's Pussers or Pussers, which is a weird one. But the only other drink that I know of that is trademarked, there are a few, but the only one that I know of is the Dark and Stormy, which is a Moscow Mule with Gosling's rum instead of vodka. Now, Gosling's owns that trademark. They don't seem to go after people. I do think Ocean Spray, if I remember, they trademarked the Cape Codder, which is what they called a vodka and cranberry. For whenever that drink got going, it was often called the Cape Codder. But then they trademarked it, and so everyone just started calling. What was that?
That's my dog. That's my dog.
Oh, it's like that's either a dog or someone's tummy. Like, was you ever rut up? But so they trademarked Cape Codder, but that name never really caught on. So they just owned this completely useless trademark. Now, I actually called my vodka cranberry at radar station the Cape Codder because I thought it was a cool name for a vodka cranberry. And I used Ocean Spray, so I was following the laws there. Anyway, so going back to post-World War and heading into the 60s, TV and music and films were getting in on the trend of tiki. And I mentioned Gilligan's Island. They had that Watubi episode where the skipper was having bad luck and he thought that he angered this god, and he needed to, I don't remember the exact premise, but he basically needed to bury the idol and wait for this native spirit or god Watubi to come and set him free of the curse. They had a similar episode in the Brady Bunch where I think Bobby found a little tiki idol and had nothing but bad luck. So it was like all these, and then you had all these records coming out, like a new genre of music was born from this scene. Again, very uniquely American style, known as exotica. Now, Martin Denny is the king in this category, along with Arthur Lyman and Les Baxter. And let me play a little bit of it. This is probably Martin Denny's most famous, well, not probably, definitely most famous piece, Quiet Village. And really interesting style, and it's completely made up by white people. Lots of vibraphones, bamboo rattlers, and jungle and water sounds, bird calls. Basically anything that sounded, well, what untraveled Americans would think sounded like far-off lands and dangerous tigers and dark jungles and big-tittied natives and fire-twirling 8-pack warriors, tropical paradise. But in the end, it really was just a new wave of easy listening. But it's funny that, and you have all these great covers on these albums, usually like a buxom girl in jungle suit garb. You're peeking through a Gilligan's Island like plastic leaf jungle, and I just love the tackiness of all this.
This made a big impact on the roadster.
Yeah, you can picture my house with all this. Like everything that I've put out in my creative effort is basically a celebration of all, like I said, post-war. It's my favorite aesthetic. That was when, that mid-century era design and all of this shit, the tacky interpretation of all this stuff. I even when I was a little kid, I was drawn to it. And now I respect it from this strange historical standpoint, but also just the aesthetic, the design, and the artists that were creating this shticky stuff. Companies like Whitco that were making, that were just catering to this design, but it was it's like the ultimate in cultural appropriation, which I'm not one of these people that are anti-cultural appropriation. I don't see how you can avoid it. I think that's kind of the point of intermingling with cultures, and you want to travel and you want to discover new things and new foods and then mingle them with what and that's how you get Tex-Mex, the greatest food on planet Earth, in my humble opinion. Obviously, that's different than putting on an Indian headdress and dancing around or going blackface. That's not cultural appropriation. That's just you being a dipshit. But I think these kinds of things are like examples of how cultural appropriation could be kind of fun, even though some people are offended by it. You know, a lot of people are offended by. You do have to remember that a lot of these idols, especially the earlier ones, the earlier depictions, these were somebody's gods. Like this was somebody that you were worshiping. So I could see a lot of people, you know, getting rubbed the wrong way with our bastardization of it. But it's so far removed from that at this point. But anyway, these records sold like crazy. It was basically like armchair traveling was how, and every time you turn the records around, I have a whole collection of these. They're really collectible right now. You can find them all over the place, but you flip them around and there's these exotic stories of travel, and it's just all bullshit. You know, it's like Martin Denny was probably like a Southern California dude, and who knows how well traveled he was, but I guarantee he wasn't swinging from the vines and, you know, being chased by natives while running away with a topless girl of the island and writing down, you know, bling, 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 doo, 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 music to go along with it.
I feel like I'm getting a glance into your dream journal, Ron.
Oh, these are my waking thoughts. I wish I dreamed about buxom girls and tiki adventures. But this, you know, so suddenly everyone had a soundtrack to this sort of armchair travel thing that was all the rage. And to me, this is the epicenter of American Kish, like right here. This is where everything came together. It was a thing of beauty. Like you also had the Beach Boys and Jan and Dean and Frankie and Annette, all sort of capitalizing on the beach, and you know, the Pacific was all the rage during this time. Hugh Hefner, going back to Whitco, he actually hired the Whitco company. And if anyone who doesn't know what that company is, a well-known designer that specialized in these kinds of like fine art, tacky. Look some of this stuff up, like Whitco Tiki stuff. I got a whole book on it because it's amazing, like insanely collectible now, as are those Exotica records. But Hugh Hefner wanted his indoor pool room at the Chicago Playboy Mansion to be a tiki den. So he hired him to turn it into that. And there are some pretty grand photos of that pool room being used, as you might expect. But so at this point, it was everywhere. Tiki was becoming everywhere. You know, tiki joints started popping up all over the country. Bowling alleys would go from Larry's lanes to, you know, Big Kahuna lanes, and motels would go from the Starlight Inn to the Lava Lodge. You know, like overnight, with these big tiki gods and bamboo signs out front, and exotic pools. You know, just tons of fake palm trees and flamingos everywhere. Anything that was thought to be more exotic than what your, you know, normal everyday run-of-the-mill life could provide became hugely popular. And even here in sleepy little Wenatch, we had our own thing called the Chieftain Inn. No. It was a clever take on, I remember, the tiki thing. Yeah, it wasn't that long ago that they tore it down. But you know, we're not a coastal town, and we're not tropical by any stretch, but they were smart because they didn't go with the nautical or Hawaiian theme as much as they went with like a giant wigwam. And this goes back to like pulling these cultural things from all over the place. Native American cultures and imagery and philosophy and religion, all this stuff came into what just thrilled white people. This is all basically about thrilling white people post World War II. But again, it was that tacky mid-century loungy version of Native American art, and it was fucking rad. I feel like that was one of the very first places I ever went in to have a drink when I turned 21. And so, but you went in there and you would see, like, it looked like Gilligan's Island, and I thought, wow, this is fucking rad. And now, of course, there are tiki bars all over the place, but you would start seeing elements of this in places that didn't make sense. And even mainstream places like Skipper's. You know, if you went into Skipper's, I don't know what Skipper's looks like now, but Skipper's when I was growing up was the same thing. It was designed to basically look like Gilligan's Island. That's what everyone wanted from something that was...
Is Skipper's still around? Is that a thing?
I don't think we still have one.
Every one that I see seems to be shuttered.
Yeah. skippers.
Man.
It's a funny thought for some reason. But
It is.
my favorite part about this whole story, though, is that you started seeing our Gilligan's Island version of the tropics start making their way to the tropics. The pretty girls with grass skirts, hula dances, getting laid right off the plane, and tiki gods all over the place, because we wanted that. The people that were seeing all of this in tiki bars and restaurants, when they finally got on a plane or a boat to go to Hawaii or, to wherever, this tropical land, they expected to see that, and they complained when they got there. So Hawaii especially sort of embraced this and kind of made up the bullshit version that we made up on the mainland.
So funny.
To cater to the people, because we were disappointed when we got there. It's like, wait a minute, where's all the stuff? So a lot of that was a bunch of the natives thinking, well, this is bullshit, but it's making money, which is
so funny how, one of the questions I was going to do today, and I think it was too easy, was true or false. The image we know of Santa Claus was put in our brain by a Coca-Cola commercial. That's the fucking truth of it. When you think of Santa in the red suit and the white bushy beard, that came from a Coca-Cola commercial, bitch.
Those are Coke colors.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I knew that, but hearing you say it sounds obvious. And it's like, I can picture that very famous Coke ad, like that painting where he's like rosy cheeks and like leaning back like, I'm getting diabetes, but it's delicious.
That's what you think of when you think of Santa Claus.
Yeah.
That's what the Santa Claus in the mall looks like. It's nuts.
Yeah. This is what Hawaii was for a while, but apparently now I've never been to Hawaii, and I'm sad that I missed this version of it, because apparently they've done away with a lot of that, and they've kind of, I don't know if a lot of the people there, especially the natives, if they were offended by it, but at one point they realized that, we don't need to be dancing monkeys for the tourists necessarily. Let's just provide them with a nice tropical vacation, and you can still see the fire. I'm sure you can still find a fire dance and the hula skirts and all that, and you still get laid. But all that was new. That was something that happened by and large in the mid-century because of white people thinking it was neat in their restaurants. And all of this started to fade away to some degree, though, during the Vietnam War, because suddenly less people were interested in a jungle theme. Their images of jungles and the Pacific were becoming pretty dark, because every night on the news, they were just seeing, people running out of the fucking jungle, burning with napalm and bombs dropping, and hearing the body count and the politics of Vietnam War. So all of a sudden, the thought of being in a jungle was starting to conflict with people. And between that and the space age stuff kind of coming into more of a fashion, the bowling alleys went from at that point to being, the lava lanes or whatever, to atomic lanes and stuff. So these things were going to fade away no matter what. But I do think it jumped out at me. I bet the Vietnam thing was pretty big, because you can imagine that, right? Tales of Arabian Nights probably wasn't terribly interesting for people during the Gulf War in certain regions. They were just being blasted with footage of the Middle East, and all these things weren't so exotic. Suddenly, it was just like a scary place where bad shit was happening. However, even though all of that was fading away, in 1970 or 1971, Walt Disney created the Polynesian Resort. And I think the first one was in Disney World. I don't know if they ever put a full resort in Disneyland, and it was funny because that stuff was all out of fashion, but it was everything you would picture about the tacky, beautiful tiki hut, tiki rooms. And that's where, the Enchanted Tiki Room came. And it was incredibly popular, especially the Enchanted Tiki Room, which of course is still there today. The Polynesian Resort is long gone, but the Enchanted Tiki Room is probably one of those things that will never go away. Although you never know with Disney. You fall in love with these classic things, and the next time you go, it's gone in lieu of some bullshit franchise that just came out. It's all like that marketing stuff now. That's not how Walt Disney set it up to begin with. So nothing's safe in Disneyland now. But So
I bet it's safe to say that half the people on this podcast have never been to Disneyland.
yeah, I think that's fair. I've only been there once. And it's fucking...
I've been a couple times.
It might surprise a lot of people that know me that I loved Disneyland. Like, I was completely enchanted by Disneyland. I was shocked with how clean it was.
Wow.
Especially in this day and age. I was like, how is this place so fucking spotless? There are people everywhere. But I finally, out of the corner of my eye, saw somebody. The reason it's so clean is because they're cleaning it up so constantly that you don't even notice it. And the people that are cleaning aren't like in maintenance gear. They're like dressed to blend in with whatever world they're working in, whatever part of the park they're working in. The garbage cans are designed like, I'm sure the Star Wars world ones, they're R2D2s. And in the cartoon land, they were like cartoon shaped, like it all blends in. And they just don't let shit get dirty. As soon as you get up from your table, somebody is wiping it down. I wasn't enchanted by that as much as I was just the artistic efforts that have gone into that place. Like everywhere you look, everything has been thought of. And it's like an artist's dream, to be an Imagineer must be one of the most amazing jobs on planet Earth. First of all, you get to be there when the parks close, working on shit and building these things, puppets and animatronics and sets and murals and sidewalks that look like ancient courtyards. And it's just like, there's no artistic talent or skill that hasn't gone into that place. There's enough of it, it really got going around the mid-century. And so there's enough of that design and look in there still that really speaks to me too. So yeah, I fucking love Disneyland. But great. This likely helped keep that tiki vibe alive, because the next wave of tiki joints really seemed to look more like the Disney version of the Enchanted Tiki Room. And so to this day, I think that Disney is sort of one of the bigger influences on the modern tiki world. So the thing just kind of keeps being rebastardized. Yeah, go ahead, John.
Did you go to that? Did you go to the Enchanted Tiki Room when you were there?
Oh yeah, like 5 times.
Crazy. Yeah.
And I did get a Dole Whip, the famous pineapple ice cream Dole Whip, which doesn't seem like a big deal, but it's pretty tasty and kind of unique.
This is similar, but not exactly the same. But in Tacoma, there is this little, it's not little, it's big, but it's kind of like hidden. It's a pirate themed bar called the Devil's Reef.
Oh, yeah.
And you fucking go in there and all of a sudden you're on the deck of a pirate ship, and like the cabins and the cubbies are, where you can sit down, and there's lanterns, and they just bring you ridiculous rum drinks.
Yeah.
Severely overpriced. But holy shit. Like, I was there for 2 hours. You had to pry me out of there. I was having so much fucking fun.
Yeah. But
we got to go there sometime.
Yeah, man.
It is a slice of Disneyland. Like, that's, I think, why so many of these places became popular. Now, yeah, overpriced probably with these drinks. But, you go into a craft cocktail place and you're going to spend $12-13 minimum for like a decent drink. And a lot of these places, especially the newer, places like, because they used to be super sugary, super corn syrupy and garish drinks. And some of them still are. But now with the craft cocktail rage, there's a different approach to a lot of these places, like Smuggler's Cove. And, they take pride in having a massive collection of liqueurs and rums and their own special mixers. So you have 13 to 25 ingredients in some of these drinks. Like, there's no... that's no exaggeration. So, and a lot of these are, more and more exotic, because anyone can go down and buy some Bacardi and Goslings and some Appleton's 10-year estate, whatever. But they really pride themselves on, the real tiki joints pride themselves on their collection of hard to get rums. But the real fun thing about the cocktail world, even going all the way back to the original Don the Beachcomber, to deconstruct some of these early, there's a guy named Beach Bum Barry who is a tiki enthusiast. I think he has his own bar, but he's written several books from the entire culture, cocktail deconstructions, recipes of his own. you know, the guy's like one of the biggest champions of the tiki world. And he spent a lot of time trying to find these original recipes, like going back to Don Beachcomber's 1932 zombie, because at that point the zombie had been made by just about everyone. And for a while, most Chinese restaurants would offer a zombie. Because
Man, I gotta ask, next time we do a show like this, we really need to plan and have like a drink that we all make. And well, sorry, Lau, you can have a mocktail and enjoy it. I'm getting fucking thirsty.
I know, it's delicious. Oh, I recommend the Mr. Bally High, and get on YouTube and watch this. When I had a bar, I was just starting to work on my tiki menu. I was only going to do like 3 or 4 drinks, and it was going to be the simple ones. But I learned a lot about cocktails on YouTube, and there's a great channel where there's 2 that I would watch. The Educated Barfly, he's really good, but the more entertaining is Distinguished Spirits, I believe. If you look up Mr. Bally High, he's going to be one of. There's only 3 or 4 videos that talk about that drink, and he's one of them. And his recipe, I didn't have, and he uses coffee liqueur. I actually used espresso syrup in mine, and just added a little bit more rum to make up for, the Kahlua. I don't use Kahlua in anything because it has corn syrup and other shitty chemicals. Kahlua is definitely not a craft cocktail ingredient, but if you got it and that's what you use, it'll be delicious and it'll work. But most newer like craft coffee liqueurs seem to be based on vodka more than anything. Like they roast their own beans and they soak them and brew them with vodka. You can make your own really easily at home. It takes about a week to really get those flavors curing, minimum. But anyway, I recommend the Mr. Bally High for anyone that wants to taste a flavor of the exotic. And let me see, off the top of my head, I believe that it's 1.5 ounces of dark Jamaican rum, 1 ounce of light Puerto Rican rum, 1 ounce of lemon juice, 3/4 ounce of simple syrup, and 1.5 ounces of pineapple juice, and 1 ounce of coffee liqueur, or coffee brandy, which almost no one has. So if you have coffee brandy, that's the original recipe, and then mix that up, give it a whip shake with just a little bit of crushed ice, and then dump in a shit ton of crushed ice, give it one more shake, and put it in your favorite tiki mug. Stick in a fancy straw, and holy shit, son, you got some flavors that you haven't had before. And again, very subtle. The coffee becomes very subtle. I actually add more coffee to it because I don't want that coffee to be so much of a background note. I want it to be a little bit more pronounced. So I added more coffee, and it's a special drink, the Mr. Bally High. And then you can you'll see the mugs. The Distinguished Spirits doesn't use the Bally High mug, but I think he shows a picture of it. And what's great about him, in fact, I used him as a resource for researching this podcast. He gets into the history of it. And his episode on Mai Tai is actually where I got the history of, who invented it. He left out a few details that I had to go to the Wikipedia page to find. But yeah, going back to, and he also tells a story about, like in his episode of the zombie, you'll see him talking about like Don's mix. So Beach Bum Berry went back to try to find these original recipes, but they were super secrety about this shit. It wasn't like it is now. There are still some proprietary things, and competitive things between one bar to the next. But now, like Smuggler's Cove is a great example. That's one of the most prominent tiki bars in the world. And they just put out a book, Smuggler's Cove cocktail book, that shows you how to make all their shit. I'm sure they're leaving some things out. But back in the day, it was a super secrety thing because it was an exotic thing in and of itself, just to travel to this bar that you've heard so much about. Like, you got to have this thing. And he was so good. Don and Vic were both so good at the mystique around it. Like, they put on the menu limit 2 zombies per customer. And you don't know how strictly they enforced that. Like I think the Distinguished Spirits guy said, but it made you think, holy shit. That's got to be a strong drink. And it is. A lot of these drinks are strong. I mean, even the Mr. Bally High, if you're using a coffee liqueur, that basically comes out to 3 shots of booze. in that one drink, and how many are you going to have? Probably not just one. So but he would have all these recipes. When they found the recipes, it was like a shot of this kind of rum, a shot of that kind of rum, and then there'd be like Don's Mix #2. And so you would have to do some research to find that, okay, Don's Mix #2, they deconstruct, and it's like, it seems like this is just a cinnamon simple syrup. But that kept them guessing for so long that they had to do their own version. They couldn't get the exact recipe. So people were like, no, that doesn't taste like what that guy's tasted. That's the original over there. But
Wow.
so they had to deconstruct all the stuff. But then it would get even more coded. That'd be like Don Mix #2 plus Don's Mix 6. Well, they'd find out that Don's Mix 6 was just white grapefruit juice. But his recipes were coded that way. Very simple things in these bottles, but because he was smart, he encoded them for decades. Nobody could replicate his drinks. And Beach Bum Berry is largely responsible for painstakingly deconstructing those and figuring out, much to his liver's chagrin. Can you imagine how many drinks you got to mix up and taste?
Dude, I, as a side project, was helping my buddy Jason out. He's the one that opens these barcades. He wants to open a craft cocktail bar, and he takes this shit seriously. And so I went to his house for a weekend to help him film. He wants to do like a video series on making craft cocktails, and he has an entire bar, of course, and just pages of fucking notes. And you could just tell. I'm like, bro, how much have you been drinking? Like,
yeah.
Jesus. He's like, it's research. I'm like, okay.
It is research, but I used to do that for a radar station. You know, most of my, well, not most. I always had like 3 or 4 completely originals. You know, like the Mandalorian Sour, which was insanely popular. And that was before the Mandalorian was even, a lot of people didn't even know what the word Mandalorian meant. You know, I ushered that in during our May the 4th Star Wars burlesque show, I think. Something like that. But it's real. You basically can make 1 or 2 recipes per session. And that's usually per day. Because once you've had, 2 or 3 shots, you're not a good judge of really what you're tasting. And if you're using like this syrup or that syrup and this amount of mint and that amount of garnish or sprinkles, that's enough to fuck with your flavor profile that you're not coming at it from a clean palate. I learned that the hard way. It's like dialing in something after trying 5 versions of it in one session. And then you mix it up the next day and you're like, wow, that's way too much lemon. What the fuck was I thinking? It's like so it's hard to do. It takes weeks and months, in some cases years, for some of these guys to perfect their signature drinks. But it's a fun world. It's a fun world to dabble into. And at this point, I'm sure that there's nothing that I invented that wasn't already out there. But you don't know. You just put it together. And
yeah.
My Tom Waits was essentially a Boulevardier with sweet vermouth or dry vermouth instead of sweet. And what else did I do differently? There's something else I put in that wasn't in a Boulevardier. But, little things like that. You just start with a basic cocktail. And then you're like, I'm not a big fan of rye. So I'm going to try that with Bushmills. And you're like, it's too mellow. And then you add some bitters. But the real fun about making cocktails is making it complex. Because one thing about the tiki world is they're not usually terribly complex drinks. Tiki drinks are what we call dangerous drinks, because they just go down in like 2 minutes, because it's like a dessert,
juice and fruit.
But the real fun for me, especially Prohibition era cocktails, is coming up with very simple but complex flavors, something that almost makes you wince. Like, that's, to me, is a good cocktail. It's like, what's going on there? But then you think it, and you think over it, and you mull over it, and you're like, there's something addictive about them shits. I'm going back for more, but I better go easy, because that's a lot. You know what I mean? That's a really hard thing to dial in. But I did that with the Tom Waits, where it's super tasty, but just enough to keep you from downing it. 2 full shots of rye. But anywho, well, there you have it. A truncated but fairly thorough history of my favorite made-up culture, the tiki world. Go get yourself some rum and some makings, a couple fancy glasses, some fancy fake bamboo straws, and start mixing some shit up. Put on some Martin Denny or Les Baxter, and let's see, what would be a good tiki movie? South Pacific isn't really a tiki movie. I'm trying to think of something that's like themed. I call that.
Joe versus the volcano.
Yeah, there you go. Speaking of volcanoes, tiki home bars have been very popular for years and years. I highly recommend getting online and just looking up home tiki bars or like coolest tiki bars. Look at some of these bars, man. They are fucking miniature Disneylands. The ones that are really having fun with it. In fact, Disneyland just opened a new tiki bar. I can't remember what it's called, but they're supposedly doing some pretty legitimate drinks. But it's sort of like the bar version of the Enchanted Tiki Room where they've done it is Disneyland. So there's like this window where they have this miniature. It's so fucking cool. I'm dying to know how they made it. Like a miniature stormy sea with a model ship that's just being like rocked back and forth on it. So it's like you're looking out a window at this tall ship on the rough seas, but it's just a little model inside this. There's shit like that, and there's volcanoes that erupt like every 15 minutes, and lava that comes flowing through the walls, and super fucking cool. I don't think there's a cooler theme on planet Earth for a bar or just a hangout joint than tiki. It gives you so many opportunities for cool shit. But
that's fucking cool.
It's fun. It's a fun escapism. And that's why, like on our last episode, when I was talking about doing the show, it's like, that's why I feel like it's a good time to do it, because we were spending more time home back then, post-war. This was a time for barbecues and patios and card tables and TV trays. This was when all these things were kind of became a thing. You stayed home, you entertained. Houses up until that point were kind of just homes, like shelters. We had family portraits on the wall, but if you look at what people were doing in terms of decor and style before the mid-century, in terms of just like average Joes, there wasn't a lot going on. So a lot of this idea of staying home and making your place have personality and, make it look exotic. This is where we started getting like giant stone fire places in these little dens and pits. Dens became a thing and super cool design and furniture. So it all kind of catered into, let's spend more time at home. Let's start a family, and we'll do the 9 to 5, which is also a new thing. Go back and look up the history of the 9 to 5 or the 8 to 5 job. That is a fairly mid-century era design. Coming after World War II, it's just the structure of everything changed. And like we were talking about on the last show, I a lot of us are starting to get the feeling that whatever life is like on the other side of the massive coronavirus shutdown, and however this thing decimates us, on the other side of it, life probably is going to change. We'll probably have new structures and new ways of doing things, and hopefully new government systems and new financial systems. And but I thought now is a great time to get into tiki, because you can start making a little slab of paradise in your own home. I mean, doesn't that sound nice? Like having a room to walk into, and you got flowing waterfalls and exotic plants and maybe a fake bird sound or two in the back distance. And a nice fruity drink ready to mix up, and just stay home and enjoy luxury of your own home. This was the time of leisure. So now needs to be the time of leisure again. We don't have to be panicked, although we probably should. Anyway, let's get on to your true and false thing.
Yeah, some weird trivia. True or false dish. Boo, boo, boo. All right, I got 12 questions here for you. We're going to do this the standard style, where we just go through them, and then I'll go to the answers at the end. Ron, you keep sweeping these, buddy. Keep doing pretty.
Yeah,
you know what?
I do much better on these.
I think John Mark has his finger on the vein of all the same things I do. So he tends to see a lot more of the same shit. This is my theory. I don't know it to be true. Yeah. So when I do my news quiz, he tends to be in the know. With this stuff, though, I think it's more of a curveball.
Yeah,
it's
they're
just
more
weird,
random,
wacky knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
But
let's find out.
Yeah, let's fucking find out.
Leave us find out.
God damn. Okay. Let's see. Question 1. True or false? Lightning never strikes the same place twice. Ron, you go first.
I'm leaning toward false.
Okay. John Mark.
I'm going to say false on that one as well.
Okay. Lyle.
God damn. I'm going to say true.
Okay. Let's move on
It'd
to
be a hard
question.
thing to, I guess you just have to test it in a controlled laboratory.
Question 2. Adults have fewer bones than babies do. True or false? Roundster.
Fewer. My gut tells me false, but that's an interesting question. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say true. Like
Okay.
one of them wacky facts.
What was the question again?
The question is, true or false? Adults have fewer bones than babies do.
I'm going to say true.
Okay. Lyle.
I'm going to go false. No, I'm just opposite of you guys. No, I think it's true. I think a lot of bones get absorbed when you're a fetus. You know, as you're a child, as you grow to be an adult, a lot of the smaller bones get absorbed up.
Yeah, interesting. It's a good question if it's false.
Question 3. Napoleon Bonaparte was a short man. True or false?
Well, I guess we'd have to know the threshold for short, but I'm going to say true. I feel like we'd know that if that was a lie, wouldn't we? I don't know. I mean, that's why we call it a Napoleon complex. Doesn't mean it was true, though.
John Mark.
I'm going to say false.
Lyle.
I'm going to say true.
Okay. Question 4. Humans truly do only use 10% of their brain. True or false? Roundster.
Oh, I remember hearing something like that. I don't know if it was that low. I'm going to go with false. I feel like they can't lock it down like that.
John Mark.
I'm saying false as well.
Lyle.
It depends what date.
Yeah, true that.
I'm thinking people these days might be 5. I'm going to go false.
All right. Question 5. Buzz Aldrin was the first man to urinate on the moon.
Ooh, now that is a trivia question I should know the answer to. Knowing what I know about that man, I feel like he would at least have boasted about that. And he was the second one on the moon. I feel like Neil was the quieter one. Yeah, I'm going to go true.
Okay. John Mark.
Fuck. Do you mean like when he was standing on the moon, or did he piss on the moon? Because that's a different question.
Yeah, I don't think you could physically piss on the moon.
Well, yeah.
I wouldn't whip my dick out of the spacesuit.
I don't know.
Who put a fly in this?
Fuck. I'll just true. I don't know.
Okay, Lyle.
I feel like the pee would just float off, right? Is there enough?
Well,
maybe there is enough gravity to pull it down.
It'd cripple the crippler.
Dick's like, which way do I aim?
Yeah, it'd just be fucking frostbitten. Shrink right
Oh,
out.
true that, yeah.
That's cold.
How cold is it on the moon again? Do we know that?
Pretty cold.
I'll look that up while Lyle's answering.
I'm going to say that's false. That he didn't pee on no moon.
I ain't a peeing on moon.
There ain't no peeing on.
Question 6. True or false? George Washington had wood teeth.
Oh, I feel like I saw a story that debunked the wooden teeth thing. And I feel like I've seen a horrifying picture of what people actually wore instead. I'm going to go false. By the way, 260 degrees Fahrenheit on the moon?
No.
That sounds way warm.
I'm going to go with
What pop is
Tiki bars up there.
Temperatures on the moon are very hot in the daytime. Look at that. We just learned something. About 100 degrees Celsius, yeah. And at night...
Typically, they say that in space, like you think of it as cold, but if you're standing, like if you're on a location like the moon or something where the sun hits directly, it's super hot. Like actually one of the hardest things to do in space is to get rid of heat. And that's why the ISS has so many like those huge heat exchanger things that are coming off of it.
Yeah.
You know what?
Listen to this.
Dude, that sounds exactly what a fucking spy would say.
Listen to the difference here. So in the middle of the day, it can be 260 degrees Fahrenheit. In the middle of the night, or, you know, no sun hitting on it, it can be minus 280.
Super.
That is a hell of a dip, son.
Oh, yeah.
Like, whew, chilly.
That
So
totally makes sense.
I got Ron's answer as false. He did not have wood teeth. John Mark.
Fuck. It sounds false, like there was something that like Ron said, but I'll just say true. What the hell?
Okay. Lyle.
I'm gonna go false. I think it was something else. Like ivory or something stupid.
Didn't they use other people's teeth? I
did.
remember seeing these horrible like
One
metal
point in time,
contraptions.
they
But,
did.
All right. Question 7. True or false? Albert Einstein actually failed high school math.
Oh, I'm gonna say false. I feel like you can't be that smart and fail anything in high school
John Mark.
I want
unless
to
you're
say
trying.
true.
Yeah. What if it was a different language?
Yeah,
What if it was
geniuses
like
are weird. You never know.
English math.
I feel like he'd have to
Yeah.
try.
You know what? It's most geniuses are the ones that skip school and go fuck off.
It's true.
So I'm gonna say yeah.
Can't pass if you aren't there.
He was too busy growing his mustache.
And not combing his hair.
Mm-hmm.
What a weird dude.
Question 8. And I can guarantee you that after I read this, one of you motherfuckers, if not all of you, are going to be trying to do it. True or false? Humans can't breathe and swallow at the same time.
That's an easy false for me. Oh, wait. Read it one more time.
They cannot breathe and swallow at the same time.
Oh, true. I can't seem to.
I'd say true as well.
I'm gonna go true too. That's a family game.
I know you can sneeze with your eyes open because I've done that.
You can sneeze and cough at the same time.
You don't want to do that. Your eyes will pop out, dude.
The
Yeah,
thing about
that's why I
the
tried
thing
it. It's like
about swallowing and breathing is it counteracts your swallowing that muscle, you know, because all it is a muscle that pushes down. So like when you try to breathe while that muscle is shut, you can't do it.
Number 9.
yeah, it's not working
True or
out.
false? Drinking alcohol actually kills brain cells.
Yeah, I feel like, boy, I feel like that's true. If not, a lot of people have lied about that.
John Mark.
Yeah, I remember hearing something about this either way back in the day, but I think all the alcohol I've drank must have killed some of my brain cells, so I'm going to say true.
Ooh,
Yeah, and they never come back. That's what I was always taught. Like once they're dead, they're dead. Although,
Dead?
God, think about that.
so
Like, wouldn't every like serious alcoholic be like borderline special needs toward the end of their life? Maybe some of them are. I don't know.
some are.
I guess some of them are. Yeah.
Some are. I believe it, and if it's not, it's through inherent being drunk and fucking head injuries. That'll do it.
Yeah, losing some of your coordination.
Yeah, try to prove me wrong, boys.
Are
Drunks.
you saying true then, Lau?
Yeah. Oh,
I read something recently that alcoholics are like 80% likelier to have a fatal fall,
oh, for sure.
which seems like an obvious thing, I guess, but I never really thought about it. It's like interesting.
True or false? Vodka is actually made from potatoes.
Potato vodka is. There's,
3 different types.
Well, I got to say false because there are different things that make different vodkas.
Yeah, you might want to pull that one. Pull that. The question's retarded.
I'm saying that one's trolls.
Trolls, yeah.
It's fruit or trolls.
Yeah, it's true, but it's false because there's corn vodka. There's
Okay,
saying-
listen, dickheads. Let me reword one fucking word here. Okay, let's try this again. True or false? Vodka can be made from potatoes.
Oh,
True. I'm saying true.
Yeah, me too.
You're all fucking wrong.
Really?
Just kidding.
No. What is potato? I mean, I'd accept it as
He
wrong.
wouldn't tell us yet.
Potato vodka could be a a misnomer. Okay.
Okay, 11. True or false? You can see the Great Wall of China from the moon.
Ooh. From the moon. I know you can see it from space. I'm gonna say false. From
John
the
Mark.
moon.
Oh fuck! I'm gonna say false too.
Lyle.
I want to tell you something else you can see from there.
Flip.
I'm gonna say true.
Okay, and lastly, Harry Potter author J.K. Rowling was the very first author to become a billionaire. True or false?
I can't think of any argument to it, so I'll go with true. I think there's plenty that should have before her, but it's kind of a timing thing too.
Yeah. Fuck. Oh, okay. Damn it. I'll say true. Fine. Whatever.
I'm gonna say false. I'm gonna say you all need Jesus, because I think the Bible has probably sold more copies than her damn books.
Yeah, but who profits from that individually?
Yeah.
Like,
Some book company, I'm sure.
Well,
It's the same book.
it's public domain.
You know?
Yeah.
all right.
Okay, I'm tallying up the scores here. Sorry, there was a lot to tally.
Is it like booby tally? No, those are like talismans.
The Bible.
The Bible, sir. Find Jesus. Jesus loves you all.
Yeah, good time to read the Bible. There's some crazy shit in there, man. Speaking of
I like Revelations.
earthquakes and tornadoes and plagues and
Horsemen.
Well,
Okay, let's go over the answers here, see how you guys did. Question 1, true or false, lightning never strikes the same place twice. That is inherently false. It strikes in the same place quite a lot. Take the Empire State Building, for instance, strikes.
See, that's a stupid question, because
and then you got it wrong. Weird. Question 2.
in nature, normal life without, like, what do they call those fuckers anyway? On top of skies, we got them on buildings here. In
lightning rods.
Lightning rods. Obviously, dude,
That is kind of a cheat. Yeah.
It's a trick.
huge tree. In nature, it doesn't strike.
No,
Yeah.
it does. It does, actually.
Yeah.
When
I
were
can't
you-
think of any reason, although what do I know about anything, but nothing makes sense that there'd be like something magic that happens like, nope, we already hit that spot. Let's move on. But
All right, number 2, adults have fewer bones than babies do. That was true, and I think you all got it right.
Yeah.
The first one, John Mark and Ron got right for a point. Second one, Ron, John Mark, and Lyle got a point. Yeah, lots of bones like the cranium start out as several fragments at birth and then fuse together into a single bone later in life. I think Lyle was on something there.
that's a good trivia question.
Yeah. Question 3, Napoleon Bonaparte was a short man. True or false? That's actually false. He was 5'7", which at the time was average in
Average
height.
height, yeah.
Yeah,
That's not even that short now. It's shortish.
the
but
rumor that he was tiny was a piece of British war propaganda.
Oh,
that
that's
really
hilarious.
Stuck. Yeah. Let's see. So question 3 was John Mark was the only one to get that correct. Boom, John Mark. Bam. Question 4. Humans only use 10% of their brain. True or false? That is false. No report has ever substantiated this. The entire brain seems to be used in one way or the other. Another has functionality.
there does seem to be evidence that we don't use most of it, or we certainly don't use all of it. Like we could tap into it, but that's kind of hoodoo voodoo meta science anyway, from what I've looked into. But yeah. I think you got what you got.
Yep. Question 5. Buzz Aldrin was the first man to urinate on the moon. True or false? That was true.
Yeah.
The second man to stand on the moon was the first to pee there into a special bag in his spacesuit.
He's like, I'm getting my first, damn it.
And he did it. Sure, he
was
did
out of-
literally shortly after, right after he stepped off the ladder. He did it.
Wow.
Do you think, though, honestly, and put yourself in his place? Do you honestly think it was out of patriotic, or is it more that he kind of like probably shit himself a little too?
Yeah, well, that's kind of what I was thinking. Is like, can you imagine
Yeah, put off that ladder, dude.
the anxiety and the excitement,
Especially
the
after watching
anticipation?
the landing. Like if you watch, you watch First Men finally, right?
Yeah, that's intense.
That landing was intense. It was fucking crazy.
Yeah.
Anyways, question 6. George Washington had wood teeth. True or false? That was false. And Ron and Lau got that correct. His actual teeth were made of lead, gold, hippopotamus bones, and donkey teeth.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you wish it was wood.
At least they're all
Let's see. Question 7. Albert Einstein actually failed high school math. That is false. He was one of the fucking greatest scientists we've ever known. Of course, he didn't fucking fail high school.
Yeah, I figure like he could have done that in his life. If he did fail it, it would have been some sort of statement.
Ron got that correct.
I could have swore I read something somewhere where he was like, kind of like, maybe that was just like a fucking urban legend or something, that he didn't do that well in school. And
Well, I just learned that Napoleon wasn't short. So look at how much bad information we can grow up with.
No wonder. Question 8. Humans can't breathe and swallow at the same time. That is true based off of all of our
Immediate research. 4 out of 4 knows.
Question 9. Drinking alcohol actually kills brain cells. True or false? This is false.
Good
Drinking pretty
news.
much any non-fatal amount of alcohol won't add enough alcohol to your bloodstream to destroy neurons.
I'll drink to that.
Always no kidding. Everyone got that wrong. Surprisingly, I would have too. I think.
I'm happy to.
Question 10. The question that broke me: vodka can be made from potatoes is true. You all got that correct. Basically, vodka is
you can make it from pretty much anything.
Yeah.
starch, any sugar-rich plant matter. Anyways,
Nice.
all got that correct.
Potato.
And then question 11. You can see the Great Wall of China from the moon. True or false? You cannot. You cannot see any man-made structure from the moon, actually.
Yeah. From space you can, like inner, or just like where the space station is. I think you can see the Great Wall, yeah? But that's not nearly as far out as the moon.
Yeah. And lastly, Harry Potter author J.K. Rowling was the very first author to become a billionaire, and that was true.
Wow.
Movies, merchandise, etc. played a big part in that. Ron and John Mark got that correct. The scores were Lyle with 5 correct, John Mark with 8 correct, and Ronster with 10 out of 12 correct.
Look
shit.
at that.
Wow, I didn't think I was doing that good.
Yeah, you did good, sir. You only got 2 wrong.
Nice.
Well done, sir.
That was fun. That felt semi-educational.
Yeah.
So apparently, let's see, the Great Wall is indeed in the image. Then the ISS crew can see it from space, though they spotted it with help from a camera. So NASA says the wall generally isn't visible to the unaided eye from low Earth orbit. So even the notion that it can be seen from space is a bit exaggerated. They had some sort of optics help. I don't know if it was a telezoom, but yeah, interesting. Knowledge in space. I'm working on a new space news story for next week. Oh, maybe next week, because I think we could all use a little perspective here. And there's something I find refreshing and cooling and soothing about just imagining space right now. You know, like spaceships and someone had a meme or a cartoon on Facebook that was like a few sets of eyeballs like wide open staring out a portal, and the caption was people on the ISS right now. Like, can you imagine what that's like? They're floating above perfectly perfectly isolated from all of this, but knowing what's happening down on planet Earth, what a fucking thought. Like they're just in a different realm, like almost literally in a different realm than what we're experiencing right now. True and total isolation from it. Very strange thought. Anyways, well, that was fun. Tune in next week. We'll probably be talking about 9/11. And if you want to support the show, patreon.com/tales from the space pod. If you want to put $2,000 in there, I'll get myself a new computer and we can get back into doing some exciting video stuff because I finally got all that shit set up. Then my computer took a dive, and this one that we're using is a passable backup for audio, but it ain't going to do the old job when it comes to video. So trying to look for someone that's got funds to help out. But even if you don't and you just want to support the show, you can do that. Tales in the Space Pod. You know what? Someone just pointed out to me. I had never thought about it. I guess I didn't know that Patreon only offers subscription, or maybe I'm wrong and I couldn't find an option that you can't just do like a one-time payment. Is that true? Do you guys know? Like if someone just wanted to donate $50 and walk away.
Yeah.
That's problematic.
So was PayPal.
Because that's what I was just going to do. I set up, because I've been doing a lot of painting, like live stream paintings and stuff, and I set up a virtual tip jar, and people have been using it. That works in that regard, and it's very simple. And that is, the one I set up is paypal.me/thecometmag. The Comet, COMET, the Comet Mag. And then you can put in whatever you want. I'm a little disappointed that there's no option to do that on Patreon, because that's the one thing that we've pitched all these years, and I always assumed that you could just do like a one-time thing.
Can't you just do it and then just cancel it?
I suppose, but that's a clunky situation, and you would have to wait.
Kludge.
I don't know how it works. I mean, you might have to wait until the next cycle, because the way Patreon pays out is once a month. So it probably doesn't bill until it clears. I don't know. I'm sure Patreon has thought of a way to make that challenging. Otherwise, if they wanted you to do it that way, they'd have a one-time option. So if you want to support us as an ongoing thing, even just a few bucks, you can do that at patreon.com/tales in the space pod. If you would like to throw in, a $5, a $10, a $2,000, one-time thing, paypal.me/thecometmag. That'll go to me. That'll go to the same. Everything's going to the same cause right now. Are we still selling merch at all?
Yeah, I haven't seen anybody buy anything recently, but we got merch on tpublic.com.
That reminds me.
From that.
We got to put some photos up. We got just a bevy of really great photos of people rocking our gear.
Yeah.
Mugs, shirts, whatever, stickers. It was
look
cool.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Bridget ordered 3 shirts actually, and I gotta be surprised. I saw a few people, and they weren't really complaints, more like feedback. Like, there were some lines in the art here. The shirt was centered weird, but the shirts that Bridget got were all really nice. Like they felt good. They've washed a couple of times. Everything still looks good. So good. I'm happy with them.
That's the key, because they're pretty reasonably priced. You never know until you get them. So is that address one more time, John Mark?
It's tpublic.com, TEE public. And you can just search for us, How Bizarre Podcast.
Nice. That's easy enough. All right, y'all. Well, stay safe. Wash those hands. We'll be talking soon. Mix yourself up a nice Mr. Bally High. Thank God liquor stores are deemed essential, huh?
And weed stores.
You get some of that Everclear. Apparently, Everclear is strong enough to kill the bacteria. If you can't find alcohol, which I can't, rubbing alcohol to make your own hand sanitizer, which is really easy to do. It's basically just aloe and, strong rubbing alcohol. But don't take my word for it. Look that up. But I'm pretty sure I read that I think it's high enough alcohol content in Everclear.
Yeah, Everclear, and I believe 151 is the appropriate proof as well.
Good to know. Because everyone's hogging that hand sanitizer out there. I found a little bottle when I was doing laundry the other day, and there was like not even a quarter of the bottle left. But it felt like, when you're doing laundry and a $50 bill pops out. I had that same experience. I'm like, oh shit, son, I got some hand sanitizer. I just basically used it right away because I could. All right, y'all. Tune in next week, 9/11.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
we need to decide on our very first movie club. What should we call it? The How Bizarre Movie Gaggle Gang Eat, Watch, Pray, Love Film Extravaganza.
How bizarre.
How bizarre.
Movie.
It's How Bizarre and Chill.
How Bizarre and Chill.
There you go.
And we got there.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. All right. How Bizarre and Chill it is. My vote is a pretty grim looking movie, and it has subtitles. So I know that that's going to be polarizing to some, but I really want to see The Platform. Are you guys familiar with this movie? Have you seen a trailer, or have you seen it pop up on your Netflix teaser? The paragraph is: a slab of food descends floor by floor in a prison. The inmates above eat heartily, leaving those below starving and desperate. A rebellion is imminent. And it looks sort of sci-fi-ish, but I don't know if that could just be the artwork. But it seems fairly dystopian. The Platform. That's my vote.
That sounds like a metaphor of
trickle down economy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I'm just imagining a piece of fucking bologna like flopping down the stairs.
Oh, you wish you were getting bologna.
Is that on Netflix, or how are we doing? Are we doing this on Netflix?
Yeah,
how are we doing?
It's got to be on Netflix because we want to do the watch party for our Patreons.
Okay. My vote would be, so I honestly don't know what all is on Netflix anymore these days that we all haven't seen, but my vote would be for, I think Freaks is on there, and I really don't know much about that, except I've read about some people watching it and saying it was like a good, weird movie, so it's like something that I'm not really familiar with.
Todd Browning's Freaks from the 30s?
No. It's a new one. It's a newer film that just came out called Freaks, and apparently it's pretty good.
Okay.
And then Snowpiercer would be another one, which would be probably a similar theme to the one that you're talking about.
Yeah.
But Snowpiercer was made
the Bologna Saga.
Bong Joon-ho, who did The Host and Parasite.
Chris, didn't you get dysentery from hitting a Bong Joon-ho once?
Oh, more than dysentery.
Shot up penicillin didn't make it go away.
It's always the penicillin.
I really wish there was a way
are we all gonna? No, you go.
I don't think so because I'm.
I really
hijacked.
Here's the thing: when I watch anything, I watch documentaries and I watch seasonal things like Stranger Things. You know, I'll bust through a whole fucking series. You know, a whole series of.
I'm glad you brought that up. Let's come back to that before we sign off with this little addendum. But go ahead, as you were.
I really don't care what we watch. I'm down to reading subtitles. I don't really care. It's just I don't have a lot to really pick from. You know, because I'm not really aware of what's going on out there.
I wasn't either. I just scrolled through Netflix to see what was on. That's how I discovered The Platform. I was like, ooh, this looks good.
I did go kind of scrolling through the
Grim.
Netflix and yeah, they're looking all good. They're all the Netflix originals.
Someone mixing a cocktail in the background.
I'm just opening a beer.
Ooh, I miss beer. I've been drinking nothing but whiskey.
So if Freaks is on Netflix, I'm going with that because I haven't seen it. But after that, if that's not on there, I'll say Snowpiercer.
All right. Well, I'll write both down on one ticket. So, Lyle, did you have a Netflix?
I really don't. I could open it up and take a little yonder.
Yeah, why don't you take a peek while Christopher's giving us his pick?
I would pick Swiss Army Man.
Oh, yeah, I haven't seen that.
Is it on Netflix?
That's why. Yeah, and it's fucking really funny. And
I haven't
the whole
seen that
time I
either.
watched it, it's really, really funny. It's like wildly funny. Yeah.
Who's in that again? Who's the star of that?
It's Daniel
Fucking
Radcliffe
Harry
and
Potter,
Daniel. And Daniel's, I forget, it's the two Daniels. He's in a ton of movies like There Will Be Blood and not Daniel Day-Lewis, the other Daniel. He's like the younger kid. But it's about a guy that gets he gets in a plane crash and he wakes up on the beach with the corpse, and the corpse becomes his imaginary best friend who can't stop farting. Like that. It's really, really funny.
Sounds like us.
Yeah,
Okay.
you know what's horrible is like a lot of these that I want to watch, or they're series, Netflix originals. They're just series.
Movies.
Yeah, I got
I
to.
know. I'm kind of scrolling.
Pick a movie.
Well, while you're scrolling, I will say what I wanted to say about Stranger Things. I loved season 1. I was into season 2. It's taken me 3 months to get halfway through season 3. I think I'm just over it. You guys,
You know,
you guys still balls deep into Stranger Things?
No,
No,
I mean,
it's
I'm
fine.
balls
It's fine.
when it airs. Like when it airs, I'm all about it. But
Yeah.
again, I do feel we're getting some, that we've just had a lot of the same. It feels like the same like thing every time. you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Like it was so novel and interesting when it first came out, and nothing was quite like it. And then there's been a ton of other stuff since. I don't know. It's weird how
Chris,
our demands changed too. Right?
do you
Yeah,
remember
I agree.
Lord of the Rings? Lord of the Rings is
Yeah.
like that. It was
Sure.
kind of like
Yeah,
awesome at the beginning, then it got really shitty in the middle, but then it got really awesome at the end.
I don't know. All 3 of the Lord of the Rings movies were great, and the Hobbit movies sucked.
The Hobbit
Yeah.
movies did suck. We all agree on that, right? Yes.
It's funny though is we watched them all kind of back to back, and they're not bad movies. I just think that tastes change a bit. I mean, don't get me wrong, they're not
The
as good as
Hobbit?
the fucking. Yeah, but like, it felt very similar in scale and everything else to the Lord of the Rings movies. Like when you watch them back to back, they feel like similar flicks. I think that
Similar,
our taste
They
Yeah.
changed.
feel, yeah, and
But
they
then
look
when
and
you
they
get-
sound, but there's just something like I was so bored with them immediately.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then
just-
when you get to the later ones where like fucking Legolas is doing that fucking Super Mario jumping shit on the barrels and fuck, and you're just, oh my god, what the fuck?
Ba-da-ba-ba-da-bing. Well, it should have been one movie. It should have been one
should have.
3-hour movie. I would have been balls deep because it
Trim
would
the
have been
fat,
back
trim
to
the
back to
fat,
back to
and, yeah,
back
make it
stuff.
3 hour.
The
Dude, I
the
heard
greatest.
James Bond. Sorry,
No, go ahead.
that this new James Bond movie that's about to drop, 2 hours 57 minutes.
Yeah.
For a James Bond movie.
That's crazy.
Yeah, is it still who's James Bond now?
Still
Daniel
Daniel
Craig.
Craig. It's the last one.
Oh, this is his last one.
There's one's called No Time to Die. And it's
We
one's
won't be
weird because
seeing that
I was
until
it's
next year, probably.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
People died making it. There was a bunch of they call it the most cursed Bond. Like so
Oh.
many things went wrong while they've been
Ooh.
making it for like 4 years.
Cursed Bond.
Interesting.
I sent you my I can't really pronounce it. That's why I sent it.
Okay, Lyle's pick is Aramentari, the blacksmith, and the devil.
It's actually really good. I've watched it. It's fucking really good.
One more time.
Aramentari. I'm guessing it's Aramentari. Okay.
I'm assuming it's the demon's name.
I think
But-
I've heard of that.
It's a really, really good. It's a Netflix original.
It's a cool thumbnail.
Really good. Really good.
Okay, you guys, let's get this sorted out. So, the way this will work is we are going to pick this and we are going to watch this. Should we
This Netflix party
should we
started.
pick a day now? How about we sit down and watch this next Friday, which will be Friday night.
17th.
Is that the 17th?
Yeah.
Sound good? Friday night? Friday night at the movies with
Time.
your Hal Bazaar. That gives people enough time to hear it, to know that it's happening, and sign up for Patreon if they want to be a part of it. So yeah, a week from this episode, and we'll say 8 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. That way it's not
Sounds
crazy,
good.
Let's,
not crazy late for the
let's,
East Coasters.
Well,
Let's do a test next week too. Just like
We
the
should
4 of
do
us,
it.
see how this works.
Make sure we can do it.
Oh yeah, for sure.
my question is how are we going to do it? Are we going to just do it through Skype and watch it through the Netflix app?
No, you don't. You
We're
don't.
gonna
You
do
don't
the
watch
Netflix
it. You
watch
just
party
watch it on your own, and then the Netflix. Once you join the Netflix party, basically it takes us all to the same Netflix window, so we all watch it together independently. We're not
Chat
gonna.
window.
We won't see anything movie related on the screen. I mean, we won't see each other. We won't hear each other talking. It's just like it's basically like a chat room where you watch a movie with everyone else.
Yeah.
From what I gather, it's very lo-fi actually. Okay, let's figure out what we're watching first of all. Very exciting. I'm going to do
Pull it out of the
this
hat. Pull it out of the hat.
so the audience can see, but I can't. Ooh, I'm kind of nervous. What do we got? What do we got? Oh, the winner is John Mark. We are either going to be watching Freaks or Snowpiercer. I'm okay with that. I think those both sound
cool.
intriguing. So
It's a date. Bitches.
it is a date. Friday the 17th. We're going to watch us some Freaks or Snowpiercer. Addendum to the addendum in the episode that won't end. Freaks was not on Netflix, so we will be watching Snowpiercer. And if you are a Patreon supporter, let's say $5 bucker fuckers or more can join us for these exploitations. I think that's fair. Patreon.com/Tales from the Space Pod will get you a chance to watch a movie, and we will be giving real-time comments, commentary, cracking wise, or maybe we'll just be silently gripped in the movie, and we'll talk afterward. We'll see how it goes. We don't really know. I got a feeling we'll be commenting along the way, though. Yeah, go ahead, Lob.
You know what you should do is set up a $25 donation of the Braun bathroom tub pick, and then like
why does everyone every fucking year someone has to bring this back up? Hasn't it fallen by the wayside at this point? Tell me that you don't even have that photo anymore, Chris. Like surely you lost that on a computer.
I have a special folder.
Inside of it.
What's those like military laptops that are like 4 inches thick? They're like $5,000.
It's so. We've been friends for so fucking long that this was taken on like an iPhone 2 or 3, like the second one.
It's got to be. It can't be that high def.
It looks so bad. Like I open it up occasionally to lift my spirits, so to speak.
Lift your spirits.
And I'm always surprised at how shitty it looks. Not just you in the bathtub looking shitty, because there's plenty of that going on. Like overall photos.
Not just me. Yeah, I bet you're right, because I'm looking at videos that I posted from just like 4 or 5 years ago, and I'm like, wow, look how happy we were with that at one point. Crazy. All right, you guys. Well, let's get on out of here. We will figure out the details. We'll make posts. We'll make sure everyone knows about this. And if you don't want to join us for the Patreon thing, then this is just a movie club. Watch the movie, and then as soon as you watch it, then you can play the episode and see what we think. We'll all be discussing it. Maybe we'll get some of your listener feedback. We'll let you know how the Patreon thing went, the live screening, if you will. And maybe we'll have a post-film discussion in that chat room. I think that could be where a lot of fun would be had, because sometimes when you watch a movie, no matter what you're excited to talk about or what really moved you, you get a week or two out and you're like, those details start to go away. So if you have that immediate discussion, which was always one of my favorite things to do at the movie nights at Radar Station. So patreon.com/Tales from the Space Pod, $5 fuckers or more will get to enjoy what sounds like a kooky movie.
Love it.
All right. We'll be doing this maybe once a month. We'll see. Tune in next week. 9/11, y'all.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Have a good night. Wouldn't it be great if the operation was named Operation Clam Slam?